This meeting is being recorded.
Now that is an entrance. This meeting is being recorded, I heard.
You did.
Sarah, that was probably the best entrance that we've had to the Infrastructure podcast so far. But Sarah, I won't steal your thunder. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. We of course have been in contact for a couple of months now, but for anyone who doesn't know you, I'm going to give you the floor to introduce yourself.
Hi, Matt. Great to meet you, and thanks for the invite to join the podcast. So I'm Sarah Milton Hunt, and I'm the Chief Information and Digital Officer for Electricity Transmission in National Grid in the UK.
Awesome. And I have an unfair advantage when it comes to my knowledge of the National Grid, because one of my super good friends has spent the majority of his career at National Grid / Cadent. So I have a little bit of an understanding, but could you please give us an intro into exactly, who National Grid are, what you do, etc.?
Yeah, so I think most people recognise National Grid from the perspective of that's where your electricity comes from. But we are much wider than that as a business. But particularly National Grid Electricity Transmission is we own and maintain the high voltage electricity transmission network in England and Wales. So basically what that means that we take electricity from different power sources of generations to power systems, batteries, solar panel fields, etc., etc. And then we transport it through our network, and then it gets handed off to a distribution network local to you that will then put electricity to your house. So that consists of about something like 4,500 miles of overhead cable. There's 2,500 plus kilometers of underground cable, and we've got around 330 substations around the UK. So that's the primary crux of what we do in electricity transmission. But if you look at it, ultimately, we've got a really big responsibility as the wider National Grid. So we have electricity distribution that deals with a certain part of the distribution network. And we have a large responsibility in delivering the energy transition in the UK and globally, because we also have representation in the US. So we do electricity transmission and distribution and gas in Massachusetts and New York in the US as well.
Got it. So when people are, perhaps on a walk, or they're walking down the street, or they're driving through the countryside, and they see the miles and miles of pylons and electricity cables, they should think National Grid typically.
Yeah, that's electricity
transmission.
That's electricity transmission. And so just to put that in context, I think something will resonate from a technology perspective. We run that transmission network at a 5 nines availability and reliability capability. So that's why, we are able to maintain that power transmission across the UK.
Okay, wicked. So got a general idea then about what the business does, and I'm sure it's much more broad than initially what people think when they think of National Grid. But today specifically, we're going to talk about technology and digital transformation and infrastructure. So from a technology perspective, what exactly is going on within your business at National Grid right now?
So if I give you a bit of context around what's going on in the business, and then I can link how technology is helping us deliver that, because it's pretty fundamental. So to give you a scale of that actual business change, we're going to run another 300 miles of overhead lines by 2030. And in fact, we'll build more overhead lines between now and 2030, so in the next 7 years, than we've built in the last 30. So when you consider the scale of what that is, and in addition to that, we're going to run another 2,500 miles of new high voltage subsea cables, which is enough to encircle the UK. That just gives you a bit of context of scale of the growth that we've got from a business perspective. So my reason for wanting to give that context is that if you look at that growth, if we don't digitize what and how we do it, we don't actually have the possibility to really take the way that we've done things historically and scale it, because we're at that inflection point where it doesn't scale. So the role that we are effectively doing from a digital and technology perspective is building the intelligent connected utility to underpin that scale of growth in our business. to meet that energy transition and the net zero target.
Okay.
And so my job is around actually, how do I, where we're doing that new growth and build, how do I help build a digitally native business for the new bits that we're doing? And then how do we transform the receiving organization to be able to converge the two back together once we've done the significant build and connect them up, so that I don't have things out of sync and out of pace with one another. And fundamentally, we can't meet that scale and pace in traditional manners.
So what we've got is we've got business transformation that's going on, so to speak. So, you know, we've got this massive growth of the actual underlying services that are provided by National Grid, i.e. a massive expansion of the subsea and the overhead cables. And what that requires is it also needs some underpinning as well from a technology perspective. So the business transformation is underpinned by the digital transformation.
Absolutely, entirely that point.
And that digital transformation, I think you said the digital native piece. Let's dive into that. So what exactly does digital transformation mean at the moment to National Grid then?
So it's how do we build the products and platforms to service that change? I think we're moving away from a heritage position of doing projects and programs to moving to more agile ways of working, so that we can deliver in a way that responds to the changes in the landscape. Because, you know, if we're looking at building overhead lines, those are large programs, but actually the world around it changes and adapts through that life cycle. So from a digital perspective, we need to build out fundamental foundational platforms with a means of actually having a data foundation to service our business and make it a data-driven business and put it at the heart of our business, and then build products that enable our workforce to be productive, effective, and actually, more to the point, real ease of use for them as an end user. Part of that, I think we're trying to do is, bearing in mind, we've got somewhat of a inherited legacy architecture that we're trying to build this all on top of. And I don't necessarily have the time to land the plane before we change the engines whilst we're flying.
Yeah.
Part of what we're taking to that approach is how do we put in an abstraction layer and using some of the product and platform capabilities to abstract the end consumer, the end user in our business, the end worker, away from actually the pain of technology change and obscure it a little bit so that we can do more rapid change underneath it, but it doesn't feel at such a pace for the end consumer of the product at the end. And as I say, if you look from building an intelligent connected utility, historically, we've been a very analog organization. We run electrical engineering that's very physical and mechanical. And with the advent of changes of digitalization in the substation with the protocol of 61850 and building intelligence on top of that, the more that we do that, fundamentally more and more of our business and what we would call protection and control equipment moves away from being mechanical to becoming digitally driven. That gives us that ability to push digital capabilities and intelligence right to the edge of our transmission network.
Yeah. So I think then, just from what you said, I think we're probably talking about things like IoT, perhaps, and, you know, maybe sensors and, you know, being able to monitor equipment. As you said, like extracting that new digital layer to give you an overview of those products and technologies. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So from a platform perspective, IoT is really key for us. And if you look in that landscape, there's so many different standards. Actually being able to harmonize that into a common IoT platform is absolutely necessary for us. Industrializing and actually putting monitors out into our systems so that we take the effort out of understanding the current status in that and putting the sensors in to enable us to do that. Clearly, we've got a foundation of SCADA capabilities that sit underneath our transmission network, but we've also got platforms like GIS that we need to consider, enterprise asset management. So there's some more of the run-of-the-mill types of platforms that we need to build, but it's not just about delivering those platforms, it's then delivering products that sit on top of them that bring real end user experience together around it. But it's loads to do.
Okay. And again, I hate to put words in your mouth, but I'm also going to infer that maybe you are leveraging some, I want to say new technologies when I say cloud, but the cloud's not really new anymore. So I'm guessing that you're moving away from like legacy on-premise, like you said, analog architectures, and you're leveraging elements of the cloud. Would that be correct?
Yeah, we're definitely into cloud adoption, and there's an interesting balance that we need to strike around how do we maintain that 5 nines reliability of our network, and there's technology in servicing that. So some of that can't deal with the latency of cloud, and there's work that we're going through with our cloud partners to work out how much we can put in the cloud, when we put it in the cloud, and when it's relevant. We're absolutely definitely shifting to that cloud piece, but there is still some relevance in putting compute in proximity to what we need to do.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a hybrid cloud approach, but we are a one cloud. We have a one cloud strategy, so we've got a very clear partnership with Microsoft in that space.
Okay. And not so much the decision to partner purely with Microsoft, because of course there's probably many reasons for that, but what's the decision, or maybe let me rephrase that. What do you see personally as the benefits to not only you, but to the organization of leveraging the cloud, right? We hear of so many organizations who are moving to the cloud, going all in on using public cloud. But what personally do you see the benefit being for you and the organization of going to the cloud?
So I think you need to find the right balance, because you can proliferate a lot of problems with the cloud that you think you're going to solve problems, and actually you still proliferate them. So when I say we're a one cloud company, whilst we primarily buy our services for cloud hosting from Microsoft, it doesn't preclude us purchasing SaaS and other cloud offerings in that space. Right. So for me, the benefit of cloud for me is pace, agility, elasticity, that ability to respond, to stand up, tear down, snapshot. If you look at it from a green perspective, the ability to actually turn something. I know we've been able to do it with on-premise compute all this time, but actually there's a lot more in it, and it's a lot more prevalent now that you can shut down the compute when you don't need it. It's only up for cycles you need it. So primarily the headline for that, I think, would be around flexibility and agility to respond. And when I look to the SaaS level of cloud, it's that ability to take the out of the box configurations and take some of the maintenance overheads from you as an organization, so that instead of becoming a technology business focused on how you do the underneath bits of it, the fundamental nuts and bolts of it, that you can become a technology business, because we all need to become technology business, but you technology business that focuses on the technology that is your core business and will make the difference. And it's very dismissive of it, and it's not meant to be intended in that way, but it allows you to commoditize much further up the stack in what you need to do to achieve.
Okay. So we've had some great insights there, right? And not only about like why cloud, but the types of digital transformation that are going on at National Grid in your specific business unit. So thank you very much for that. What I would like to do is dig a little bit more deeper into your role as well as CIDO. So, of course you signed a job description, and you there were certain things that were in that job description you were expecting to do on a day-to-day basis, but what you actually get up to, and reading between the lines, is probably a lot more different. So what do you see as your mission, as your raison d'etre for being the CIDO? What is your purpose at the National Grid?
When I look at my colleagues on the electricity transmission exec, when I talk about digitizing our business, my reason for existing is for us to actually not need a CIO, because we're inherently a digital organization, and that we've got the constructs and the mechanisms to be able to consume, exploit, and deliver that digitally native capability in what we do. So we're connecting customers, we're building new infrastructure, we have to do asset operations and maintenance and management. We've got network strategy and planning, which involves our control rooms. if they're all inherently digital, my job gets less and less and less and becomes a much more of a coordination and partnership role than it is about I do IT or digital to you. And I'm really explicit about that. So when we talk about digital inside National Grid, we talk about it from 3 very distinct components to it. So the first thing we need to do is have reimagined what we do, rather than just trying to industrialize necessarily the things that we've always done. So we start by reimagining. The intention is then to deliver it in agile, iterative ways so that we can realize value as quickly as possible, accept an MVP, and then build and grow and really deliver from that. And then thirdly, if we're doing both of those first 2 things right, we really should be into the realms of looking for frontier technologies, because we should be on the boundary of maybe blurring traditional lines. And when I talk about frontier technologies, that just doesn't have to be new stuff. That can be innovation. We could take something from car manufacturing and apply it to energy. I can take something from retail and apply it to how you connect to a transmission network. And it will be frontier for this industry in how we do that. So that's how we look at digital. And my reason for existing is to try and exist less.
So you're building yourself out of a job, basically.
I think what you're seeing is actually the CIDO role is becoming closer to the general COO type things. You have to understand your business. It needs to be business driven. I think every business is going to work out it needs to become a technology business or a digital business, and it needs to find out what the right digital business is to become. And so it's a necessary seat at the table. I don't think it goes all together, but I do think it becomes a broader shared remit in how we realize that.
Okay. So if you had, one pain, one thing within your job that you could just get rid of, that one challenge that you think, every single day like this, I just wish I could get rid of this. And it doesn't have to be someone nagging at you, mate, or maybe a kid that's coming knocking on the door when you're working from home, obviously work related. But what is that one challenge that you as a CIDO think, I wish I could just get rid of that, eradicate it?
I think in this day and age, if we weren't saying that we were talent constrained, I would be madness. There's plenty of things I'd like to that are challenges, particularly in a regulated business, which we are, around pace and being able to execute, that some of the constructs we have make that a challenge. But I think the biggest thing I'm struggling with is making sure that we can find the right talent to come in and then just be able to clear the way for them to be awesome. And the market's remarkably hot, which is great for everybody. People are getting multiple offers, and by the time you think you've locked somebody down, they've already got a better offer. But the thing I suppose I counter that with, we are looking for, and we are struggling with recruiting and getting the right people in. But I think we're an organization that has a phenomenal purpose. So if people really want to take both their digital competence and talent and apply it to a societal need and a longer term value, it's one of the things I love about my job. I can look at my kids and think I'm actually trying to do something to leave something in my job for them. So from a purpose driven perspective, I think we're in a great position in delivering that energy transition.
Because there's not really much less important than the national grid, right? Like, if you're providing the underlying infrastructure for electricity, which the whole world runs on, so pretty important.
I mean, we can absolutely, and it's a whole system thing. We're a citizen in a whole system, and we all have our responsibilities. So there's the responsibility for each of us to live up to it. It would be a travesty if we were able to generate green energy and then we couldn't connect it fast enough to consume it to realize the net zero commitments. If we weren't able to stop the climate temperature increases, etc. And so we all need to play our part. So definitely, I can't see much without bigger purpose at the moment.
And then one final point on that, Sarah, is when you say that there's a talent shortage and you feel like you're struggling to recruit people, are you talking about engineers? Are you talking about enterprise architects? Are you talking about transformation leaders? maybe you're talking about all of them. You know, what are the roles which you feel like you're really struggling to find?
I think it's across the board, but it's not just finding people with that technical competence and expertise in a particular area. It's about people that can understand how that relates to servicing the business outcome and being outcome driven. Because I can be the best engineer, I can be the best architect, but if I'm shut in a room with my head down and my backside up and I come out with a beautiful architecture that has no relevance to the business and isn't going to make a difference, and that you don't understand why and how it needs to make a difference, that's really, really important for me. So I think we've got a challenge across all of the technical competencies from that perspective, but it's really important about it's a slight unicorn element of it is people having those competencies and knowing how it will make a difference for a business.
Yeah, you know, it's that old adage of the engineer who knows how something works, but they also know how to explain it in a way that other people who don't know how it works can understand. You know, that person who has got the core engineering or technical skills, but can also translate that, you know, relevant to the business and translate it to a business. Completely agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, it's not just how it works, it's why it works. What does it do? Why?
Yeah.
Coming back to that age-old clarity, and let's start with why, and then being able to correlate it to how it works.
Okay, so we've already spoken about new technologies possibly being brought into the business, and you know, as a CIDO, I'm sure that part of your remit is to know you explore new technologies and listen to the new technologies that are on the market and bring those in. I talk to a lot of, you know, people in positions such as yourself, and they mention that, you know, they of course have that mandate to bring technology onto the business, but they're sometimes pestered by sales and marketing or IT vendors. And, you know, it's not that it's a necessary evil. They know they have to engage with these people, but the ways that vendors sometimes engage with them leave a little bit to be desired. So how I'm going to frame this question is, right, you have the mandate to bring technology onto the business and to learn about it. How would you like to do that?
Having sat on both sides of the fence, I know the challenges from the other side. Working in HP certainly gave me that insight to it. So I do understand how difficult it is to get on the other side of the fence, my agenda, and that how do you make the most of that time when you get there. I think for me, we purposely go out and look for innovation and new tech, at least on a quarterly basis. And it's not necessarily always tech that we will just say that's what we want to implement. Some of it is actually where we'll want to work with somebody that's going to invoke a different way of thinking for certain people, and how do we bring ideas to the table in how we could transform as a business. And it doesn't then necessarily mean we go into a sales process and buy the tech. So it's not only about knowing and understanding the technology, it's what it can do to help us change our thinking and our thought process about the job and the work that we need to do. From the perspective of how do I like to be engaged, not via email spam. I mean, if I looked at my LinkedIn and socials and all of those things, it's very difficult to sift through that between the sales approaches. Same for my email as well. The really important thing to me is, and I suppose I used to thinking sitting on the other side of the fence is, again, back to the why. What difference can you make? And actually to have bothered to understand my business challenges and what we need to achieve, and actually why the technology or innovation is something we should spend the time on.
Yeah.
And I don't mind what channel you use to do that. But actually, as long as you can give me something that's a hook that is relevant to something we need to know for a business outcome, then you're more likely to get oh, hang on, I'll reply to that.
Okay. So
a generic generic sales pitch and a generic email, and I'd love to connect, and I'm sure I've got something valuable to you. But once I've had 3 conversations and can work out what that is, that has a relationship back to we're all time poor. So if you can make a difference in a short amount of time and make it easy to decide to engage, that makes a difference.
So to paraphrase what you just said, you're looking, what attracts you, what piques your interest is when you can see that someone has actually sat down and taken time to synthesize a message that makes sense and is relevant. Someone's not just taken a marketing deck or a generic sales pitch. What they've done is, be quite consultative and professional in their approach. And they've taken the time to understand you, your business, and how their technology could possibly play a part. Basically, they've created a hypothesis which they want to present to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that makes a massive difference.
Okay. So, and there was another point that I wanted to pick up on, which you said, after 3 calls, I still don't understand what you do. So is that a big part of it? Do you find that often vendors are maybe trying too hard to discover your problems rather than presenting their solutions? Why is it taking 3 calls to find out what a vendor does?
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I don't have the time to do that, to invest it in that way, to help you sell your product to me. And the other thing is that's a cost to the consumer. My time's a cost to our end consumer. It's all of anybody that's using electricity in their house and in their life, and paying an electricity bill is actually paying my costs, and that's always forefront in my mind of, am I doing the best thing here? So if I have to have 3 meetings with you for you to work out how to sell something to me, then we've not got a lot to talk about. So right. At the end of the day, we're saving everybody money in being better at that.
Okay, got it. So another point that I wanted to touch on is a lot of people that I speak to in your position as well, they say that they take much credence from their network of peers. And they will reach out to their network of peers to ask about a technology or to learn something about a new area before even thinking about speaking to a vendor. Would you agree with that point?
Definitely. I think that you have a network of people that you rely on for those insights, especially on the basis of, have you done this? Have you experienced it? Are we the first ones to do it? That no one wants to be the first into the dark, but if you end up having to be that's not a problem. But I definitely reach out to my network to get a view on that. So It will matter. It does matter when someone says they've got a brilliant technology, but they drive me bonkers.
So you're actually asking, not just about, does the technology work? Is it good tech? You're actually asking about the company and, like things like service, support, all of that stuff as well.
It's all relevant. I mean, you can have the best tech, but if you're the most impossible people to deal with, the cost overhead of that and the effort overhead of dealing with that has an impact. So, at the end of the day, we're a regulated business. We run UCR compliant procurement. But we will seek those things and understand them as we go through those procurement pieces, because I need to consider it in the round. It's a total cost of ownership consideration that does come to play in making some of those decisions. I mean, it doesn't preclude that being clarified in a procurement process, but actually it definitely will have an impact, and it has an impact if you are hard to deal with. Okay. Psychologically, no one can say that if someone's hard to deal with, that they go, I'd love to go back for more. Yeah.
Okay. So I know one moment ago I said final question, but I've had one more thing that's come into my mind. So, thought leadership events. So again, I hear many people like yourself say that they like to attend private thought leadership events, not necessarily things like things that are hosted at the Excel Centre, not big exhibitions, but peer groups, again, where you're invited and you're talking about thought leaderships. Maybe there's a speaker, things like that. Do you personally feel that that's a drain on your time, or would you consider attending events like that? Is that something that, again, you find value in?
No, I do attend events like that. I am selective about them though, around, but they need to be relevant and of purpose and value to me. But it's massively insightful to be able to sit around a table of small number of peers, really share your experience, share your concerns, share your lessons learned around how you're going about it, what your thinking is, find out if you're the outlier or not in the landscape, and work out if that's a happy place to be.
Sure.
So yeah, absolutely invaluable.
Wicked. Well, Sarah, I personally have learned a lot from this conversation. Didn't know that there was multiple segments within National Grid. I thought I was an expert coming in, having a best mate that works there. Turns out I'm not. Turns out that there is, I didn't understand just the vast amount of digitization that's going on at National Grid, and the amount of work that's going on. And, that's crazy as well. And it's really interesting to hear about. And then also the types of technology that you're using, those things that annoy you as a CIDO, and of course, all the insights about, how you like to understand technology. So what I like to do at the end of the conversation is, we've talked about retention and recruitment. If there's anything particular that you would like to pass out to an audience, anything that a message that you want to portray, I'm happy for you to have the floor and finish on that.
Definitely. My headline will be, I put everything that we're looking for out on LinkedIn. So if you're interested in becoming a part of the energy transition and really making that societal contribution for us to reach net zero, and you've got a digital competence, capability or talent, please reach out to me, connect with me, and keep posted, because there's plenty of work to be doing and there's plenty of opportunity to come and make a difference with us.
Okay. You're going to regret that when you're absolutely spammed with LinkedIn connections and cold calls. And it's all going to come from me.
I don't want cold calls. I want the people that are actually going to do it. I don't want, and the other thing is, let's be really clear. We do have clear frameworks for agencies. And I spend most of my time saying to people, I'd love you to, but you need to go speak to these people. But it's from directly to people that are looking to join us and be a member of the team. Would love to hear from you.
Wicked. Well, Sarah, as I said, thank you so much for your time. Great conversation. It's been great to have you on the podcast, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thanks, Matt. It's been great to talk.
Thank you.